A shape moves in the lane behind them. The deputy who owes me, hair plastered to his head, jaw clenched hard enough to crack a tooth, doesn't step forward and doesn't step back. The boy from the pay shed watches from under the eave across the way, small as a question. The preacher's window glows down the street, pale as a conscience that can't sleep. The town holds its breath. "I'll come at dawn," I say, "and I'll bring something you'll want to hear." A whisper of bravado, a thin blanket against cold. The company man smiles like a door swinging shut. "If you bring anything but apology, bring a friend," he says. "You'll need a witness." The sheriff touches the brim again, and they leave in a knot of rain and boots and the sound of authority dissolving into weather. I close the door and lean my head against the wood until my bones remind me that standing is work. The room exhales with me. In the corner, the floorboard does not move. Under the cupboard, the note I pinned earlier flutters as if it wants a better hiding place. I pin it twice. My hands are not steady. I wash them, and the water runs pink and then clear and then warm and then only wet. In the basin, bits of glass clink like small bells. Thunder rolls. Lightning flays the town. Somewhere beyond the tracks, a telegraph clicks frantic, then stops, then starts again. A bird that forgot which direction is south. I draw a breath, and a taste of lamp smoke and animal fat and determination. Then the door nudges inward without knocking. The miner steps in, hat in his hands, mud at his hem, dignity unbroken. He closes the door behind him like a man afraid to let weather overhear his next sentence. "They came to arrest you?" he asks. "They came to make me small," I answer. He nods as if we are speaking of something as ordinary as bread. He places an object on my table, wrapped in a rag that once was a shirt. "I went to the yard, Uprihud," he says, "behind the bathhouse. Found this by the drain." He peels the rag. The rag peels back a silver watch chain, snapped and stretched. Not the watch, the umbilical. It gleams with a memory of the man who wore it and the boy who might again. My throat chooses a new size. "They'll say you stole it," I warn, and despise the way fear trains wisdom to speak first. He shrugs. "They already say worse." He looks me full in the face for the first time since the shed and asks the question no one has asked aloud. "Do we have a chance?" He means more than the watch. He means the weather of this place. "We have a story," I say. "We have paper with the company's own teeth pressed in wax. We have a boy who saw." His eyes flick to the door, to the street, to the clock with no key that sits above my shelf. "They have the judge," he says. "For now," I say. "For now is a wall you can climb, if you bring a ladder and a crowd." He grips the table edge, knuckles pale. "If you need me tomorrow..." "I'll need you," I cut in, because saving a person is more persuasive than saving pride. He nods. He works the chain through his fingers as if testing its truth. When he leaves, his shoulders seem heavier and his steps sound lighter. Courage has weight. It also floats. After midnight, when the rain thins to nails and the lamps sleep, I take the last copy out from its hiding, warm the wax with a candle stub, and press the seal once more so the crest bites clean. I slide the page into a clean bandage roll and tie it with a knot I can open with one hand. I dress in clothes that don't mind benches, dust, or shame. Plain skirt, plain coat, boots with laces doubled. I pin my hair back with cheap brass and tell my face to practice not flinching. Mini hook, a postcard under the door, pushed by a nervous hand, skitters across the floor and kisses my boot. I bend. My name, bold. The stamp, federal. The handwriting, brisk. Arriving at first light, observe only. Inspector R. I feel joy like a blade. Dangerous, sharp, capable of cutting in both directions. If the company knows he's coming, they will set the table. If they don't, we will. Dawn bleaches the edges of town until everything looks like a paper cutout against a hard sky. Roosters hustle through their poor opinions of morning. Somewhere, a man coughs the way men cough when dust is their breakfast. I lift my bag. I check the floorboard, the cupboard, the hollow sycamore where one packet sleeps, the widow's kitchen eve where another hides, the church step where the last waits in a prayer no one meant. I tuck the smallest roll into the lining of my coat, flat against my heart, and feel it there like a second beat. I open the door to a street that smells of damp wool and new fear. The boy is waiting with his bottle empty, his hands full of nerve. "I'm coming," he says. "You are," I answer, "but you'll sit where you can't be hurt." He scowls in the direction of manhood. "I can't be hurt," he lies. "Everyone can," I say. "That's why we bring bandages." He nods, insulted by truth. We walk toward the courthouse that isn't a courthouse, just a room with a raised desk and a man behind it who knows which side of the ledger his dinner comes from. People gather along the way, the widow with her chin up, the miner with his chain, the deputy with his debt, the clerk with his pen and his courage shaking inside his hands. The preacher stands at his door with his collar white and his mouth uncertain. He does not bless us and he does not block us. He lets us pass like a river he can't dam today. Inside, benches creak and the air smells of dust and decisions. The judge rubs his ring as if it were a lamp. The boss sits 2 chairs away from piety and looks bored in a way that costs money. I take my seat at a table so scarred it looks like someone fought a long war with it and lost. The sheriff leans near my ear. "Remember what I said," he murmurs. "Dawn is a line." "So is the truth," I say, because I need my mouth to be brave when my stomach isn't. The gavel lifts. The boy's eyes find me. The boss tilts his head as if he hears a watch ticking in a room where none should tick, and the door at the back opens to admit a small man with a federal seal pinned to his lapel just before the judge declares the second ledger inadmissible. The gavel drops like a hammer on thin glass. "Order," the judge says, and the word rings hollow in a room built from lumber the company donated at a discount. The federal inspector takes a back bench, small as a punctuation mark that can end a sentence if placed right. He keeps his hat on. The boss's eyebrows lift in a brief hello that stops at the forehead. The preacher inhales like a man about to sing and then doesn't. "State your business," the judge tells me, and I do, not with outrage, but with the steady cadence of a healer taking history. "Men coughing blood," I begin, hands split, backs twisted, lungs that sound like torn sails, hours that stretch past the legal day, wages withheld to discipline what the company calls attitude. The word tastes like rust. Murmurs ripple through the benches, quieted by the sheriff's raised palm. I set my bag on the table. The room breathes like it's waiting for a knife or a miracle. I call the boy. He walks to the front like a man climbing a high ladder with no one below. His shoes leave small wet moons on the floor. He swallows, then speaks in a voice that will one day be a man's and right now is sharp enough to cut a liar. He names the chain. He names the pocket. He repeats the word discipline as if it were something you could hold up to the light and examine for cracks. The boss smiles with just his mouth. The judge nods without writing. The inspector writes without nodding. I lift a bandage roll that is not a bandage and untie it with fingers that remember how to move when fear would stop them. I slide the copied page onto the table. The room learns to read all at once. Men craning, women still, the deputy's jaw locking until muscle jumps. The judge leans, then leans back as if proximity were consent. "Objection," the company's man says. "Stolen property." The gavel loves its own sound. "Sustained," the judge declares. "These copies are inadmissible." He doesn't look at the seal. He doesn't have to. Everyone else does. The crest sinks into red wax like a signet pressed into a wound. "Inadmissible in court," I say, loud enough for the benches, not loud enough to be contempt. "Readable in town." The sheriff's eyes flick to me with something like warning wrapped in applause. The inspector jots a note. The boss crosses one ankle over a knee and studies the ceiling as if the boards hide a friendly god. The company calls its clerk. He moves like a man dragging a sack filled with both rocks and kittens. He sits, swears, steadies the paper with both hands. "Explain the books," the company's man invites, friendly. The clerk explains the official ledger, the one with hours and pay within legal margins, the one that lies well. "And the other book?" I ask, casual as rain. The company's man shakes his head. "There's no other book?" The clerk stares at a knot in the wood and decides whether to live small or take a bite of air big enough to choke on. Mini hook. He breathes in, breathes out, and says, "There is." The room tilts. The judge's mouth thins. The boss's smile reaches his eyes and dies there. The company's man says, "He's mistaken," and the clerk says, "I'm tired." And in that moment, everyone decides what that word means. The judge declares the statement speculative. The inspector's pencil moves in a way that promises this conversation will be had again, elsewhere, with teeth. The preacher rises as if pushed. "We must remember," he says, "that the company feeds families." His voice places loaves on tables and erases the hand that takes half back. I stand. "Families feed the company," I answer, "with their lungs, with their time, with a watch taken from a dead man's son and called discipline." The judge bangs the gavel as if hitting me will make me shorter. "Control your tongue," he warns. "It's the only thing I can control in this room," I say, before I can stop myself. The benches try not to smile. The boss doesn't. The sheriff steps closer to my table as if proximity might save either of us from paperwork later. "Stick to injuries," he whispers under the gavel's next bark. I do. I lay out the medical ledger I kept for myself. Dates, names, fractures, coughs that rip from gut to throat. Hours following hours. A sequence that looks like a machine eating. I place a hand on the page, on my own cramped handwriting, on the small truth of ink that no one can call stolen because it came from my lamp, my pen, my nights. "This is my book," I say, and the judge cannot take it because he hasn't learned to steal from women who don't owe him rent. Mini hook. I lift the broken watch chain, the miner found by the bathhouse drain. The light catches it. Silence holds it up higher. "Property of," I begin, and the company's man is on his feet like a spring. "Irrelevant," he snaps. "Dramatic." The judge agrees with the kind of speed that means the conclusion was written before the sentence. "Set it aside," he orders. I lay the chain down as if I'm putting a child to sleep. The boss stands to exhibit generosity, a performance he's rehearsed in mirrors. "We can resolve this," he says, spreading his hands, palms clean of callus. "Wages can advance, tempers can cool, apologies can be made." He turns toward the miner. "You owe me one." The miner doesn't blink. "I owe my father a watch." It lands like a bell struck true. The judge, who has a dinner time, hears none of the things worth hearing. "This hearing is adjourned for a closed review," he pronounces, meaning a room without us. He instructs the sheriff to disperse the crowd, meaning peace through absence. The benches groan as people rise with the knowledge that truth has to live outdoors in this town. The inspector stands, small, quiet, moving toward the side door no one else uses. As he passes, he lets his hand drift across my table like a blessing that fears being seen. His finger taps the seal, once, twice. I understand. Keep it safe. Keep it visible. Keep it from fire. Outside the square is a mouth about to speak. The church bell and the train whistle argue for air and find each other's throats. Women line the steps with faces that say we saw. Men button coats against a wind that isn't weather. The deputy looks at his own badge as if it could be put down. The clerk takes a place beside me that he has no right to and every right to. The preacher hovers between door and flock, a bridge that can't decide what bank it belongs to. "We're not done," I tell the miner, and my voice surprises me with how it doesn't shake. "Not here," he agrees, and tilts his head toward the yard gate where men return from shifts the way the sea returns what it has no use for. "Whistle," he says. "Whistle," I answer. A plan blooms in our mouths without needing syntax. The public, the reading, the seal, pressed against the air. Truth as big as a noise machine can carry. I face the crowd. "If the court won't hear it," I call, "the town will." The words rise like heat, like a rumor you can't arrest. The boy threads his small fingers into the widow's hand. The deputy unpins his badge and sets it in his pocket with the care reserved for heirlooms and ammunition. The clerk opens his mouth to scare himself, and doesn't. In the boss's eyes, a faint boredom gives way to something alert and hungry. The shift change whistle sucks in air for a long scream. The deputy lifts a page to read. The boss signals to his men. And a glass bottle slips from a child's hand and explodes white across the black mud just as the first club rises. The whistle inhales like a beast finding its first breath, and the town gathers, where metal meets men. Steam ghosts the gate. Rain polishes faces into masks. I climb the loading steps so they can see a woman whose job is stitches and lungs hold a page like a weapon. Across from me, the church bell rings, late and loud. Brass arguing with iron, God debating payroll. The boss stands near the scale house, with his hands folded the way a man does when he is pleased with his weather. "Order," he says to no one and everyone. "Order," the bell repeats. The whistle laughs and screams. "Read," I tell the deputy, and he does. The badge already in his pocket, like a tooth pulled clean. His voice starts small and grows ribs. "Line item, late fee invented. Line item, script penalty for attitude. Line item, collateral, discipline." The last words land, like nails tossed onto a road. Wagon wheels will feel them later, but feet feel them now. Murmurs crackle. Men look at their stubs as if they might change in the light. Women lift their chins and stop blinking. Minnie hook. The boss touches the chain around his neck, and the watch winks where a heart should be. Sun, weak but true, finds the dent near the crown that I learned by lamp the night the mountain closed a door and told us not to knock. I hold the crowd's gaze on the glint. "That, I say, is our dead speaking." The company's men try the old trick, noise, boots thud, clubs thump into their own palms. "Disperse," someone calls, voice trained to sound official in any throat. The bell agrees. The whistle doesn't. The deputy reads another page. The words have the beauty of machinery when it behaves. Dates aligning, amounts marching, signatures repeating like a confession a man can't stop saying in his sleep. "Names," a woman calls. "Say the names." He does. He says them like prayer beads. Work beat, debt beat, hunger beat, until the air wears them like a sash. The clerk steps forward, hatless, pale, both brave and broken. "Those entries," he says, throat tight, "are not mistakes." He looks at the boss as a man might look at a father who never learned to love anything he couldn't inventory. "We kept 2 books," he says, and hears his job fall off him like a coat. The crowd quiets in that particular way a crowd does when truth pokes through and they're not sure if they're glad or cold. The boss lifts a hand and the club boys step. "Don't," I say, loud without shouting. It buys a second. In that second, a small hand slips, a glass neck slicks, and a milk bottle falls from a child's fingers and explodes white across the black mud. The sound is modest. The picture is a sermon. Milk, paid in coin, carried through weather, rationed like hope, bleeds into coal until innocence turns the color of a shift. Men flinch. Something in their faces tilts toward shame or rage. Either will do. The boss sees the tilt and chooses speed. "Clear them," he says, and the clubs rise like weather that thinks it's God. The first blow is a warning written in bone. The second writes its answer in blood. The whistle screams harder, a loyal beast refusing to be trained. I feel my feet move before sense can argue. "Inside," I call, and the crowd answers, not with words, but with weight. Bodies pivoting toward my ruined clinic like birds turning at once. Clubs follow. I don't let them choose who enters. I tear my sign down, fever room, and tack it to the door with a sound that tells the town what we are now. A ward, a refuge, a line. "Lay them here," I say, and boards know my voice. I rip linen into strips and name each wound without asking who wore which coat. The miner's sister braces a man's arm while he swears he doesn't need help. A woman I've bandaged before grabs a broom like a spear and keeps the doorway honest. The deputy plants himself in the frame, body broad, words measured. No one swings where blood is on the floor, he says, and the room believes him. Minnie hook. The boss steps into the clinic wearing the watch like a medal, its chain a grin on his chest. Mud freckles his cuffs. "End it," he says to me, and his voice is almost tender. "Apologize. Hand over the fakes. I'll fix your window. I'll pay your rent. I'll send milk for the boy who drops things." He looks at my hands and sees the cost he can save me. "You're a healer," he adds. Heal. I stitch a scalp with the neatness of a woman doing something she's already decided. "We don't sell back time," I say. The thread bites. The man under my hands hisses and then thanks me. The inspector appears in the doorway like a footnote with teeth. Rain slicks his sleeves. Determination sharpens his hat brim. He doesn't make a speech. He makes an entry. Notebook open, pen doing its small rain on paper. He watches the boss, the seal on my pages, the deputy without a badge, the clerk without a job, the boy without milk. He is not our salvation. He is a pressure valve on a machine that could kill us and call it policy. Still, pressure matters. The whistle finally runs out of breath. The bell tries to claim the last word and overreaches. Its note cracks and dies, a gold throat gone hoarse. The crowd's noise softens into the low rumble of people counting how many bones will ache tomorrow. The boss steps closer, too close. "Last chance," he murmurs. "Last chances are how you buy futures." My mouth finds a quiet it trusts. "Admit the ledger," I say. He smiles. "You first." He turns to leave and is forced to pause because the doorway has found a shape it prefers. A deputy who owes me a boy's life and intends to pay in the currency of risk. "Badge," the boss says mildly. The deputy touches his pocket as if to check that he put it there. "Not today," he answers. "Today I work for the room." The boss's eyes harden into flint that will spark later. He steps around him, and lightning chooses that moment to draw a signature across the sky, as if the storm has decided to write the truth down too. I work until hands forget sorrow and remember craft. Blood, linen, iodine, instructions. Press here, breathe, drink this, don't faint, I need the floor. The miner appears with his jaw set and the chain coiled in his palm. He doesn't ask. He holds the door when I say, and his back becomes a plank men can lean against without falling. When it is almost quiet and my legs threaten mutiny, the inspector clears his throat as if coughing up a clause. "Dawn," he says quietly to me, "platform, bring what you can prove. I'll bring what I can compel." He does not promise victory. He promises a place to put our voices. "We'll be there," I say, and feel my bravado, remembering how to stand straight. Outside, the yard steams hate into the sky. The church bell sulks. The watch ticks on the boss's chest as he confers with men who smell like wet wool and old money. He gestures once toward the clinic, 2 fingers like a knife. The sheriff watches both of us with the eyes of a man who owns too few choices and too much memory. I mop, I breathe, I tuck one sealed packet deeper under the floorboard, set another under the empty bed frame where a child once hid from thunder, and keep the smallest against my ribs, where I can feel its edges remind me that paper, when pressed right, grows a spine. The night thins into a copper-gray morning. A telegraph runner slaps a damp note into my palm. "Inspector, arriving now." And as I step toward the platform with the town at my back, I see the boss waiting there already, the watch catching dawn like a blade. Dawn makes the platform look honest. No shadows left to hide under, only faces and rails, and a sky that offers light without comfort. The inspector steps off the car with a satchel, a small man carrying a large silence. The boss is there with his coat dry and his jaw set like a ledger line. The watch rides his chest like a dare. Around us, men hover with the wary patience of animals waiting to see which way the fire runs. Women cluster with shawls and certainty. The miner stands a pace behind me, the chain in his fist, and something calmer in his eyes. Then sleep. Explosive hook. The inspector doesn't greet. He seizes the payroll lockbox from the company runner with the soft violence of a man who knows a clause with teeth and intends to use it. "Under authority of federal inquiry," he says, voice neat. Keys jingle, lids lift, papers breathe. The platform inhales. The boss smiles the way a man smiles when his lawyer told him where the exit is. "Your claim," the inspector asks me, pencil ready. "Not outrage. Inventory." I lay it out like a triage. Injury logs in my cramped hand. Copies stamped with the company crest. The deputy's signed confession that the second ledger exists. The clerk's short statement in shivering letters. The inspector reads faster than I speak. "And the itemized theft?" he prompts. I turn the copy to the line that has burned the backs of my eyes for days. Collateral, discipline, silver watch, taken from family of deceased. The pencil stills. The inspector looks up and holds the boss like a nail under his gaze. The boss's tone suggests we might all be late for supper. "If there was a misunderstanding, I'm willing to make it right." He caresses the watch as if it were a pet. "The company values morale." The crowd mutters the way a congregation does when the hymn is off key. The inspector's mouth twitches, as if it remembers a smile, but won't testify to it. "Remove the item," he says flat. The boss hesitates, one blink too long. The inspector's hand drifts to his satchel the way a man might reach for a small law with a large effect. The boss unclasps the chain with a E motion so practiced it betrays how often he's imagined this moment ending differently. Mini hook. The watch drops into the inspector's palm, and the sound is not a clink. It's a heartbeat caught, held, released. The inspector doesn't keep it. He turns and places it in the miner's open hand with a precision that borders on ritual. No speech, no flourish. A thing that was stolen returns to the gravity that loves it. The miner swallows hard enough that his throat clicks. He lifts the strap and buckles it. The dent near the crown sits against a pulse that finds its old rhythm like a song remembered at the exact right note. Some men cry without sound. He is one of them. The town looks away respectfully and sees more by not looking. "Wages," the inspector says next, and the lockbox opens its mouth without choosing sides. He counts packets, reads names, finds gaps, fills them. "Back pay for Yuki." He names men whose faces change shape under the sound of their own names. He points to the clerk. "You'll assist." The clerk steps forward and earns his breath. The boss gestures at lawyers who aren't here and promises letters that aren't arriving. The inspector doesn't hear him. He inventories, stakes. The company can close ranks and call this a fluke. The judge can shrug. The sheriff can go on being patient with the wrong people. But a federal seal, on a morning like this, writes a line that even the company can't erase with a better pen. "This inquiry is open," the inspector announces. "Operations continue under review. Secondary ledgers are to be presented." He doesn't say, or because he doesn't need to. The silence after the sentence carries the knife. The boss leans in, sugar in his voice, poison in the glass. "Doctor," he says. He gives me a title I didn't claim to soften my spine. "Let's be sensible. The clinic roof is a sieve. Your landlord is paid," the landlord's wife says from the crowd, voice high with the courage of a woman who has already decided she will not be different tomorrow. She holds up a receipt like a flag. The boarding house women ripple a soft laugh that sounds like bread cooling. The boss's eyes cut to me. He tries again, softer still. "I can fund you properly. Supplies, heat, milk for the poor. You can save more lives if you stop trying to rearrange the world." I feel the proposition, like a warm room in winter. It smells like comfort. It sounds like reason. It carries the particular sin my heart is tempted by. A chance to do good by swallowing one bad thing and pretending it never happened. Inside my coat, the sealed copy edges my ribs like a thorn, saying, "Remember." "You don't fund medicine," I say, and I hear my own voice as if it belongs to someone braver and older. "You pay hush money. The difference is who dies while we count." He studies me as if I were a puzzle whose missing piece he will buy. He can't. I have it. It's mine. Mini hook. The deputy steps onto the platform and without ceremony lays his badge on the plank. "I'll take the confession again," he says to the inspector. "Under oath this time." The inspector nods. The badge does not jump back to its owner like a contrite dog. It sits. It learns a new master, the town. The preacher watches this transfer with a look Christians reserve for miracles they didn't authorize. He raises a hand, then lowers it. He says nothing. For once, his silence is holy. The inspector asks the company for the second ledger. The boss calls it a rumor. The clerk says it has leather the color of old blood and a wrinkle on the back where the boss's thumb rides. The crowd laughs in the way crowds laugh when fear starts to go thin around the edges. "Produce it by evening," the inspector says. "Or I go to the district." The boss shrugs, a motion designed in a mirror to look like a man having to accept a minor inconvenience. The watch ticks audibly on the miner's wrist. Time has chosen sides and found its voice. I should feel triumph. Instead, I feel gravity reasserting itself around a new center. The miner's sister appears at my elbow with eyes that have learned to be dry first and wet later. "Thank you," she says, the words working like a stitch that gathers skin back to skin. "Don't thank me," I say. "It's not over." She nods like she's known that since birth. The crowd thins into work because hunger doesn't pause for spectacle. The inspector confers with the sheriff in a corner of the platform that smells of creosote and consequences. The boss slips into a circle of men built to absorb shame and return it as policy. The deputy collects a paper from me he has already read, but wants to hold as if weight could persuade the law faster. The boy with the empty bottle touches the miner's sleeve, and then the watch, and then his own wrist, as if inventing a future. I pack my satchel. I want to sleep for a week. I want to stand until dusk and watch the watch tick. I want to crawl under my floorboard and curl around the pages like a dog around a bone. Instead, I walk back to the clinic because blood is stubborn and stitches need checking. On the steps, the preacher stops me with a hand that has lost certainty. I prayed for order, he says. Order came. He looks at the watch on the miner's wrist and the seal on my pages and the inspector's hat and finds theology he didn't rehearse. Maybe I meant justice, he admits. Pray better, I say, and he doesn't take offense. Inside the clinic, I mop last night's dirt from the floor with a care I wish I could extend to the whole town. The room smells of soap, iron, and the thin sweetness of survival. The landlord's wife returns with a bucket and a stubborn kindness. We work in silence until the window shines and the table feels like it might forgive us. The boy sits by the door, practicing how to say what he saw without crying. He gets to the word, discipline, and his mouth hardens. I nod. He nods. We are a school. A telegram arrives, damp and official. I crack the envelope with hands that learned a trade and found a purpose. Inquiry limited, operations continue, provide ledger by dusk or district seizes. The inspector's handwriting is firm, the news mixed. I read it to the room because rooms learn what to hold from the voices we give them. Limited, I repeat, and the word tastes like rationed milk. Enough to keep you upright, not enough to grow. I step outside to find the miner waiting, the watch now ticking against skin that remembers pride. He lifts his wrist like proof and seems heavier and lighter at once. I thought it would feel louder, he says quietly. It doesn't have to, I answer. It only has to be on time. He laughs once, short, honest, grateful, and not. He'll come for it, he says. For both. He means the watch and the wages. He means our nerve. I look past him toward the tracks. Clouds pile like unspent anger. The whistle will blow again and again. That is its job. Mine is to be here when it does. When he comes, I say, we'll be holding the thing he wants with both hands. I touch the satchel where pages sleep and the floorboard where proof waits, and the spot over my ribs where one seal still edges my skin. And he'll learn something about time he's not ready to know. The inspector's runner sprints back, face white with the speed of bad news. Company refuses second ledger. Boss calls it fiction. At sunset, we plan a reading under the yard light. But before the hour strikes, the boss walks into my clinic alone, closes the door, and offers a private deal I may not be strong enough to refuse. He locks my clinic door behind him like he owns my air and sets a thick envelope on my table where I stitch men back together. Take it, the railroad boss says, voice easy as sin. And take yourself out of this. The room smells of iodine and rain, clean, then not. The envelope smells like heat and glue and a winter I wouldn't have to fight. He doesn't sit. Predators stand. His coat drips a neat circle onto my floorboards, the same spot where last night I hid the stamped copies and taught Wood to keep a secret. I fund your clinic till spring, he says. New roof, coal for your stove, glass for your window, milk for that boy who can't hold his bottle. He smiles like a butcher who knows your family's favorite cut. In return, you say you were mistaken about a second ledger. You say grief blurred your judgment. He lays a second envelope on top of the first, as if money can be stacked into mercy. You're a healer, not a hero. Heroes leave a lot of bodies. I don't touch the paper. My hands remember the shape of a skull wound, the way skin resists the first stitch and then trusts you. You wear a dead man's watch for weeks, I say, and bring me milk as medicine? He glances at my satchel, which is not where the copies are. Medicine treats symptoms, he says, almost kind. Power fixes problems. He opens his palm. Keys gleam. Storage. Office. Safe. Take them. Copy your pages properly. We're not enemies, you and I. I keep men in line. You keep them on their feet. We work the same side of survival. Mini hook. He leans close enough for me to smell good tobacco and cheap control. Refuse, he adds softly. And I make this town choose between you and supper. He recounts the math out loud like a catechism. Blacklists, scrip, the landlord's doubt, the judge's boredom. He taps the envelopes twice, a rhythm you could march to. Take care of your little room, he says. Let me take care of the rest. I think of how warm the clinic would feel with a full coal scuttle. I think of the widow's hands in winter water and what it would cost me to keep them dry. I think of the boy with the bottle and how he watched glass become a sermon at the gate. I think of the inspector, small, precise, a claws with legs, and of the deputy about to swear against the hand that fed him a badge. I think of the chain on the miner's wrist, the dent near the crown, pressed against a pulse that finally runs true. I regret nothing so much as how tempting this is. Tell me something, boss, I say. Who sealed 23B? Don't say the mountain. Say a name. For the first time since he closed my door, something flickers behind his eyes. It passes. Accidents happen, he answers, and turns the word like a coin. Signatures follow. I step closer so he has to smell the clean on me. Then sign this, I say, and hand him the truth he can't hold. Produce the second ledger by dusk, or the district takes the box and your job with it. He studies me for the longest minute of my year and then pockets the keys he was so ready to give. You've chosen to be expensive, he says. He leaves the envelopes. He knows the trick. Make me pick them up. I don't. He rests his hand on the door latch, and his voice goes intimate, fatherly, false. One last kindness, he murmurs. When the inspector leaves, I will still be here. You will still be here. Ask your conscience which of us this town will need in February. He goes. The room exhales like a lung freed from a belt. I carry the envelopes to the stove and feed them to a flame that has listened to every lie this week. Paper blisters, glue sings, heat takes one good deep breath, and lets go. I stand long enough to ensure every corner blackens. Then I fetch the floorboard. The sealed copies lie where I left them, pulse true under my palm. We're not for sale, I tell wood, wax, and my weaker half. At the square, the deputy waits coatless, as if weather can't disagree with a man who has a thing to do. The inspector's notebook is open to a fresh page. The clerk stands beside me like a ship that's lost a mast but found a compass. The crowd is thinner, work calls, but thicker with intent. The judge is absent. The sheriff is present and unhappy about what that means. Under oath, the inspector says. The deputy raises his hand. His voice doesn't wobble. He names dates, procedures, the second ledger, moving from safe to desk at shift change. He names the stamp, the wax, the thumb-worn leather. He names the word I can't bleach from my head, discipline. The watch, the inspector prompts. The deputy swallows. I saw it entered as collateral. I saw it worn as warning. His eyes flick to the miner, to the boy, to me. I saw enough. Mini hook. A telegram runner stumbles into the circle, cheeks wet with sprint. Company refuses ledger, he gasps, calls it fiction. The inspector's pencil stops. He glances at the sheriff. If they won't produce, I seize. The sheriff's face becomes a map of every compromise he's ever made. You'll need me to keep order, he warns. You'll need order I don't provide, the inspector replies. The crowd feels the hinge swing. You can hear the town pick a side by how it stands. We walk, no parade, just boots and skirts and a decision, toward the office. The boss meets us at the door, a smile tuned to the key of reasonable. You're disrupting operations, he says. The inspector's voice is a chisel. You're under review. He presents a typed authority and a calm contempt. Open the safe! The boss spreads empty hands. Nothing inside but tomorrow's wages. I step past him because persuading men with papers is the inspector's job. Finding what papers are afraid of is mine. The office smells of ink and animal pride. The safe yawns. Envelopes stacked neat as hymns. The desk is clean. Too clean. I crouch where tide lines of dust should tell you what moved last. There's a rectangle of darker wood on the shelf behind the chair, a ghost of a book that learned to run. The inspector sees it too. Where? He asks, civil as tea. The boss shrugs. Where what? The clerk, colorless and brave, looks at the floor behind the cabinet. False base, he says, almost apologizing. The deputy and sheriff slide the cabinet. Wood grinds, a panel shifts. The second ledger blinks in the light like a wet animal dragged into air. The room stops. The watch ticks. The boss keeps his hands visible like a man who grew up around guns. The inspector lifts the ledger with a care that gives the moment the weight it deserves. He opens to a random page and doesn't find random things. Fines wrapped around names, hours that don't line up, a column of penalties for attitude. He turns to the entry I know by heart and lets his pencil drop onto collateral. Discipline. You can feel a machine misfire. You can smell a system find a seam. By order of the district, he says, payroll and the secondary ledger are seized. You. He meets the boss's eyes with a small tiredness that isn't. Victory. Are suspended pending inquiry. The boss doesn't bother to protest innocence. He builds a different story on the spot. Persecution, misunderstanding, bureaucracy. He looks to the sheriff for a friend, finds a man counting his own ribs. He looks to the preacher, finds a collar turned toward the floor. He looks at me last, and his smile promises in February I won't enjoy. The crowd outside hears the word suspended and breathes like they haven't all day. The miner's hand lifts. Watch catching light. And for a second, the platform isn't a place men go to leave. It's a stage where a town remembers its name. The inspector threads through us toward the station, with the ledger tucked like a newborn against his chest. I'll need statements, he says. I'll need witnesses. The clerk nods. The deputy nods. The widow nods. The boy nods before he knows why nodding is brave. We spill back into air. The church bell stays still, as if it knows it doesn't own this minute. The whistle lets out a short, almost playful note, as if even machines can learn gladness. The boss passes close enough for me to count his pores. He stops just behind my shoulder where only I can hear him. You won the morning, he says. Nights are longer. He walks away as if sunset belongs to him. I carry that line back to my clinic where the floor remembers a flame and the window understands weather. I scrub the table until the wood shows its true color. I pin the inspector's typed order above my shelf where every patient can read it and translate it into medicine they trust. We aren't crazy. We aren't alone. We aren't done. The town begins to move like a creature that could heal. We plan a fund, a co-op, a watch chain of our own making, but as I lock the clinic at dusk, a new telegram waits in the doorframe. Inquiry, limited by district pressure. Prepare for retaliation. I slip the note into my pocket and reach for my keyring, already thinking of what a winter of holding the line will ask from my hands. Victory doesn't sound like cheering. It sounds like breathing. A room full of it, deep and even, after weeks of men swallowing air in gulps. The miner sits on my table, palm turned up, watch ticking where it belongs. Feels like my father's hand, he says. Outside, the town murmurs the way families do after a funeral and before a birth. We start small because small is real. A jar on my shelf bearing a crooked label, Clinic Co-op, fills with coins heavy for their size. The widow keeps a ledger that doesn't lie. The landlord's wife brings glass squares wrapped in newspaper. We glaze the broken pane with hands that learned stitches on skin and can learn them on light. The boy places a fresh milk bottle on my table and waits. I pour 2 cups. We drink. White and clean glass looks like forgiveness. We braid structure from kindness. 3 women write minutes in a school notebook no one thought would ever be this useful. A miner who can't lift since last winter tallies donations with the seriousness of a man rebuilding a lung. The deputy, no badge, new backbone, walks the street with a quiet that keeps peace better than boots. The clerk drafts a statement for the district that reads like a confession and a map. The preacher shows up one night with blankets and an apology he can't yet say aloud. I take the blankets. Warmth translates fine without verbs. Mini hook. A knock. I open the door and find an envelope with no seal, just a short list of names and the word blacklist penciled at the top. Men who spoke, women who stood behind them, vendors who sold us bread when the company told them not to. The boss, suspended, not gone, still moves levers through longer arms. We were warned, the widow says. We were, I answer. He thinks winter makes the spine soft. The room looks at my coal scuttle. It's low. We look at our jar. It's honest, but not generous. The math is the old math. Only our shoulders are new. We set rotations for wood piles and soup pots. We share recipes that stretch beans like ideas. We put aside coin for funerals and pray not to spend it. We draft the clinic charter on paper so clean, my pen feels unworthy. No one turned away. Truth told before comfort offered. No signatures in secret, keys held in pairs. I slip the charter under glass beside the inspector's order. 2 truths, the one that came from outside and the one we built. The inspector's letters arrive like weather reports from a far city. Inquiry continues. District slow, keep records, expect pressure. I keep records the way some people keep saints. Names, injuries, hours, favors, threats. Who came with milk? Who came with clubs? Who came with words they didn't know they had in them until they heard their own mouth choose a side. One evening, the preacher stands in my doorway with his hat twisted in hands that bless to both sides too long. I prayed for order, he says. I think I meant comfort. He studies the watch on the miner's wrist and learns faster than most men can. I am learning a better prayer. He looks at my charter, at the jar, at the widow counting coughed coins into a clean row. Teach me to count like this. We do. We add up what matters. The boy asks the hardest question. Is it over? He says, and his voice carries milk and broken glass and a perfectly remembered word. Discipline. I kneel so my face is where his is. No, I say, and watch disappointment arrive and then make room for dignity. But it's different. He nods like a man deciding who to be. He touches the watch, and then my stitched palm. You didn't sell, he says. I close my fingers around his small wrist so he can feel the engine under skin. We don't sell back time. We pass through days that look ordinary from a distance and radical up close. Men go to shifts and come home without stopping at the company store first. Women stop, apologizing before they ask for what they're owed. The deputy learns how to say no to the right people. The clerk learns how to sleep. The landlord fixes my roof and takes less for the trouble because a woman with a ledger taught him how to like his own math. Then the wire hums with the sentence I knew I'd read. Inquiry limited under pressure. Operations continue. The district has eaten as much truth as it can for now. The machine still breathes. Winter comes early. It smells like steel and decisions. That night, someone chalks a circle with a slash on the boarding house door. The mark looks smaller than it used to. Minnie Hook, the boss, coat perfect, future uncertain, stands across the street in daylight and doesn't look away when I meet his eyes. February, he says, a promise and a threat. February, I answer, a weather report and a vow. The miner shifts his weight so the watch shows like a coin you don't need to spend to know it's yours. The town draws itself up an inch taller, the way a back does when it discovers it has muscles. We hold a meeting under the church eave, where even bad theology can't drown a good plan. We lay out the community fund and the rules for its use, the way we'll answer blacklists with baskets, the way we'll map guard routes not for theft, but for truth. We print, with a borrowed press, a single sheet paper called the town's ledger and nail it to the gate at dawn. Injuries, hours, fines, names, apologies if they arrive, and a blank space titled Watch Returned, where a single checkmark already lives. The last open loop closes quietly. The widow brings a small velvet pouch the color of old blood. Inside, the second brass tag from 23B, twinned to the one in my pocket, crescent dent catching light like a scar that learned to bless the skin. For your ring, she says, not the finger. The key ring I carry like a rosary. I thread the tag next to the clinic key so I'll hear the past whenever the present asks me to open a door. Night presses its face against my window and fogs the glass like a child deciding whether to knock. I unpin the charter and read it out loud to a room that has learned the language of truth. I lay a hand on the floorboard where paper sleeps, on the shelf where the jar breathes, on the door that once held a knock I was supposed to obey. I listen for the whistle. It comes on time. In the morning we walk together, women with ledgers, men with hands that know rock and regret, a boy with a bottle he can now carry steady. The platform looks different because we do. The inspector's small hat recedes toward a district we might someday trust. The boss is a shadow at the edge of his own influence. The watch ticks on a wrist built for work that doesn't steal the heart to do it. Winning sounds like breathing, I say to no one and everyone. Not cheering, breathing. The miner glances at the sun, then at the watch, then at me. On time, he says. I touch my keyring, metal, brass tag, dent, promise in a pocket. When they come back, I tell the town, so will we. Hands that heal can hold a line. The whistle screams. For the first time in a long time, it sounds less like command and more like a clock,